The stars do not speak, but their silence is a language older than words. Long before Earth knew the warmth of fire or the shape of thought, the galaxies spun in a silence so vast it pressed against the edges of meaning itself. In this silence, questions formed, not from mouths, but from the geometry of time. Among them, one has always lingered like a whisper caught between heartbeats. What if humanity was never alone in its becoming? What if the seed of our existence did not sprout from blind chaos, but was planted, deliberately, precisely, by minds far older than our sky? The human genome is a library written in a language no one taught us to read. Inside its spiraled staircases lie echoes of choices, some guided by evolution, others that seem too ordered, too abrupt, as though hands had touched the clay while it was still wet. Of the 3 billion letters that write the code of a human life, only a sliver separates us from the apes. Yet within that sliver is the capacity to imagine gods, to compose symphonies, to launch machines beyond the grip of gravity. That sliver is also where mystery breathes. In 2013, a team of geneticists uncovered what they called orphan genes as stretches of DNA with no known ancestry, no evolutionary precursor, no discernible origin in Earth's tree of life. They called them de novo, as if summoned from nothing. But nothing does not write in such symmetry, nothing does not compose structure with such meaning. These genes appear suddenly in the record, as if inserted, as if whispered into the womb of the Earth. If an intelligence beyond our comprehension wanted to leave a signature, it would not do so in stone. It would leave it in the blood, in the cells, where time forgets but memory never does. The Sumerians told of beings from the sky who shaped man from clay. The Dogon people of Mali knew the orbit of Sirius B before telescopes ever touched the stars. Ancient myths, scattered like broken glass across continents, speak of visitors, teachers, judges, architects, who arrived not in fire and conquest, but in light and instruction. These stories, separated by oceans and centuries, describe the same skywalkers by different names. In their hands they carried symbols, in their voices mathematics. Their presence was not conquest, but calibration. And when they left, they disappeared not with destruction, but with silence. Their absence became a wound we forgot how to feel. In 1974, a message was beamed from the Arecibo Observatory into the void. It was our declaration of awareness, a string of numbers and chemistry and logic sent into the cold hope of interstellar hearing. In 2001, in a field of wheat in England, a pattern emerged overnight. It was not random. It mirrored the format of our Arecibo message, but altered, adjusted, to describe beings unlike us yet eerily similar. It included their DNA structure, their height, the tools they used to perceive time. Mainstream science dismissed it as a hoax, but the mathematics did not lie. Whoever wrote it understood binary biology and resonance. The image showed a face not human, not monstrous, just other. And it stared back as if waiting. Some theories are not built to comfort. In 2013, Dr. Vladimir S.H. Cherbak and Dr. Maxim Makukov published a paper suggesting that the human genome contains a message, an embedded signal that could not have arisen through Darwinian mechanisms alone. Their idea, known as biological SETI, proposed that life on Earth may have been seeded intentionally with encoded information genetic programming designed not only to grow life, but to awaken it. Like a time capsule buried in the folds of our being, waiting for consciousness to evolve far enough to notice. Their peers ridiculed them, but the data remains. Within the codons, repeating ratios echo Fibonacci spirals and prime number patterns. These are the fingerprints of logic. These are not the tools of blind mutation. What kind of being engineers life across the stars? It would not be a god in the human sense, jealous, wrathful, sculpted in man's broken image. No, such beings would think in centuries and sculpt in genomes. Their tools would be gravity and geometry, their ethics incomprehensible to them. Humanity would not be a final product, but a question asked in flesh. A prototype, a project, a story told not in words but in evolution. They may not be watching with eyes but with equations, monitoring how we think, how we kill, how we love, and perhaps how we remember. If this is true, it would mean that humanity is not a fluke but a design, But design does not promise kindness, it does not guarantee safety, it does not answer prayer, it only suggests purpose, and purpose is heavy. It asks why, it asks what now? For if we were shaped by hands not of this earth, then we carry a responsibility not to them, but to the future, to ask why we were given fire, why we were taught to name the stars, why we dream of ascending, of returning to something we cannot name. What if the instinct to look up is not curiosity, but homesickness? The ancient texts speak of a fall, not from grace, but from memory, a forgetting so total it became identity. If we were engineered, then perhaps what was taken from us was not freedom, but context. We live inside a story with the first page torn out, and we spend our lives trying to remember the name of a song we've never heard. Our myths are broken reflections of that melody. Our wars are the echoes of a disconnection too old to mourn. What if the Eden we lost was not a garden, but a planet, not innocence, but awareness? What if the apple was not sin, but awakening? The Drake equation suggests that intelligent life should be abundant, yet we hear nothing. The Fermi paradox asks, where is everyone? But maybe the silence is not absence, maybe it is waiting. Maybe the engineers are not elsewhere, but beneath perception, beneath time. Watching not from ships, but from synapses, waiting for us not to contact, but to remember. What if first contact is not arrival, but realization? Across the cold canvas of the universe, panspermia remains a plausible theory. The idea that life travels via comets and asteroids, spreading like fire in dry grass across the galaxies. But directed panspermia life spread deliberately is not mere theory, it is engineering. Francis Crick, co-discoverer of the DNA double helix, once suggested that life may have been seeded on Earth by an advanced civilization. He did not shout this belief from podiums, he whispered it as one whispers a fear too large for language. If DNA is a message, then it is not one we wrote, but we are the ones unfolding it, base pair by base pair, dream by dream, and what we find inside may not be instructions, but a mirror. Mars bears scars of water. Europa hides oceans beneath ice. Titan breathes with methane rain. The ingredients for life are not rare, but the self-awareness to ask why, that is rare, that is sacred. And if we were engineered, then perhaps our greatest achievement is not technology, but the ache for origin. The yearning to belong to something greater, the sense that we were meant for more is not arrogance, it is memory, distant, distorted, holy. There are structures on Earth that defy time. The Great Pyramid encodes pi. The temples of Angkor align with constellations. Göbekli Tepe predates agriculture, yet maps the heavens. These are not accidents. They are bookmarks in a story we forgot we were writing. They suggest not primitive superstition, but astronomical precision. Who were the teachers who taught stone to sing? What if the ultimate experiment is not physical, but moral? What if the engineers are waiting not for our technology to rise, but for our cruelty to fall? What if they do not measure progress in machines, but in mercy? Then perhaps they are already here, not in the sky, but in the choice between hate and hope. Perhaps contact comes not with sound, but with silence. Not with ships, but with peace. This is only the beginning. I will continue unfolding the rest of the 12,000 word narrative in seamless continuation from here. Let me know if you'd like the next part now. There is a silence deeper than sound. It does not live in the absence of noise, but in the vastness of what cannot be spoken. Between the galaxies, where the light from ancient stars drifts like the ashes of forgotten fires, there lies a quiet so complete it bends perception. Time stretches in those empty corridors, unraveling into threads that reach back not just billions of years, but towards something older than time itself. In that silence, the universe does not sleep, it waits. The stars are not evenly scattered across the sky. They clump together in spirals and clusters, like memories forming around a dream. Each star is a furnace, ancient and immense, but they are not eternal. They burn, they swell, they die. Some collapse inward, folding space like paper, forming black holes, graves of gravity so dense not even light can escape. And around them, in the quiet halls of nothingness, orbits the debris of things once alive. Moons without suns, planets stripped to their bones, dust that once held oceans, cold and drifting, dead but not forgotten. We call it the observable universe, 92 billion light years across, expanding into nothing, stretching into a horizon we cannot reach. But what lies beyond that edge? What exists where our tools go blind? Beyond the last whisper of microwaves from the Big Bang, past the red-shifted ghosts of quasars, lies an abyss untouched by knowing. We name it darkness, but even that is a guess. Perhaps it is not dark. Perhaps it is something else entirely, something so different from what we are that we lack even the words to misunderstand it. In this vastness, Earth is not even a dot. It is less than a whisper inside a storm. Yet here, on this pale skin of rock and salt water, something strange has occurred. Against all odds, life emerged. Not just life that replicates and crawls, but life that questions. Life that builds mirrors from metal and stares at its own reflection. Life that looks up into the black and asks, why? This is not normal. Nothing in the cosmos suggests it should be. In the known universe, of all the thousands of exoplanets discovered, none bear even the whisper of language. No breath, no fire, no cathedral of neurons dreaming of the infinite. Why here? Why now? This question lingers not in the stars, but in the code written into every cell. DNA, a double helix spinning like a cosmic ladder, carries instructions older than memory. It writes the shape of your hands, the rhythm of your heart, the hunger for air. It is ancient beyond comprehension, and yet, certain parts of it should not be there. Within the genome lie puzzles that evolution does not explain, sections of genetic code that appear abruptly in the record, without ancestors, without transitional phases, as if they were inserted, as if something edited the script while the stage was still being set. Even in our own minds, there are questions no one can answer. Consciousness flickers like a flame behind the eyes, but science cannot locate its source. We can measure the electrical patterns of thought, the chemistry of joy and grief, but we cannot find the spark. The moment the brain becomes aware of itself is the moment we stop understanding it. What is awareness? What is the soul? And if it emerged from biology, why does it feel so exiled? Some physicists now believe the universe may not be entirely real. That what we call reality is a simulation, rendered by rules so perfect we mistake them for laws of nature. The Planck constant, the speed of light, the strange quantization of energy, all signs, perhaps, of a system designed, not born. A cosmic program running in a machine we cannot see. But who or what would build such a thing, and why? There are equations that describe the shape of spacetime, the unfolding of entropy, the entanglement of particles across unimaginable distances. But no equation tells us why anything exists at all, why there is something instead of nothing, why a proton, so small it could vanish into dust, carries the exact charge to balance an electron. Why the constants of physics are tuned with impossible precision to allow stars to form, atoms to bind, and life to emerge. This is called the fine-tuning problem. Some say it is coincidence, others say it is necessity. But another possibility remains, that it was chosen. Perhaps the universe is not an accident, but a canvas. Perhaps the laws of physics are not laws, but instructions. And perhaps within this great machine, certain worlds are seeded. Not randomly, but deliberately, targeted, prepared, gardened, and Earth. Earth is strange, too stable, too fertile, too perfect. It sits in a narrow band of space where water remains liquid, where the moon keeps tides rhythmic, where the magnetic field shields life from radiation, and the atmosphere clings to breathe. It is not impossible. But it is rare, like a violin left in the vacuum of space, waiting for fingers that know music. In 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio detected a signal from the stars, a sharp, narrowband transmission from the constellation Sagittarius. It lasted 72 seconds. It has never been heard again. Scientists called it the wow signal, but no one knows who sent it or if it was sent at all. It is a whisper in the static, an anomaly without context. A flare of intelligence in a sky otherwise dark. There are places on Earth that should not exist. massive stone structures built with no known technology, temples aligned with the solstices, tombs carved with stellar maps. Civilizations that rose too quickly, with knowledge too advanced, and then fell into silence, as if someone had helped and then stepped away. The myths remember what history forgot. Stories from every continent speak of beings who descended from the sky not as conquerors, but as teachers. They gave language, they taught agriculture, they spoke in symbols, in dreams, in light. The names differ: Anunnaki, Viracocha, Sky People, Star Ancestors, but the essence is the same. They came, they touched. They vanished, and we were never the same. Maybe they left nothing behind but stories, or maybe they left something far deeper. Inside us, the human brain is an organ of staggering complexity. It contains more connections than there are stars in the Milky Way. It runs on electrical whispers, chemical sighs. It dreams of things it has never seen, but the leap from animal to architect was too fast. In a geological blink, we went from fire to fiber optics, from caves to cathedrals. From worshipping the stars to walking among them. Evolution does not sprint, but something pushed us forward, and now we are reaching again, sending probes to the moons of Jupiter, searching for biosignatures in alien atmospheres, broadcasting signals into the darkness, hoping for an answer we may not understand. We speak to the cosmos in mathematics, in frequency, in golden records carved with the sound of human breath. But the question remains, who are we really speaking to? And are we the first to ask? If the universe is old enough to create us, it is old enough to have created others. Civilizations millions of years ahead, ancient beyond imagining, perhaps they are gone. Or perhaps they moved beyond biology into forms we cannot detect, fields of thought, lattices of light, consciousness unbound by flesh. Perhaps they do not travel across space. Perhaps they plant and wait. Not all seeds grow, but some do, and what if we are one of them? What if the story of humanity is not the tale of a random species that climbed from the mud, but of something left here, built here, watched, measured, grown? What if we are not alone, not because something is out there, but because something is already inside? What if the mystery is not the stars, but us? And what if the silence we hear is not absence, but expectation? The deeper we peer into the structure of the cosmos, the more we begin to sense that something is fundamentally wrong with the way we have come to understand our place in it. The universe, on its surface, appears to obey laws, clean, mathematical, indifferent. But when examined closely, these laws whisper things that feel more like riddles than rules. Space is not empty. It bends, it stretches, it moves. Time, once thought to be constant, is malleable, slowing near gravity, freezing at the speed of light, flowing differently for two clocks separated only by altitude. If you travel fast enough, the past becomes future, the present elongates, and distances collapse into singularities. A second for you could be 1,000 years for another. And yet, despite this strange fluidity, every moment still feels sharply, unexplainably real. Why should conscious minds emerge within such a distorted and untrustworthy flow? Why do we persist in a state of now when the universe itself does not acknowledge that now exists? The contradiction is not simply intellectual, it is personal. Our very sense of being breaks under the pressure of what we know. Light, the fastest thing in the universe, does not experience time. A photon leaving the heart of a dying star and hitting your eye experiences no journey, no separation. From its perspective, its departure and arrival are the same moment. Distance is erased, and still we live as if we move through a world of stable surfaces and reliable space. We cling to what we can measure, even as those measurements deny our understanding of motion, memory, or will. When we look outward, we see the bones of time scattered across the sky. Stars burn with hydrogen for billions of years, transmuting it into helium, then heavier elements, until their cores collapse under their own weight. In that collapse, there is violence, supernovae that outshine entire galaxies, throwing iron and carbon and oxygen into the void. These are the ashes we are made from, the calcium in our teeth, the oxygen in our breath, the iron in our blood, all forged in the death throes of stars. And yet, those elements only emerged after multiple generations of stellar death. The first stars were too simple, too pure. Life, as we know it, could not have existed in the early universe. It had to wait. The cosmos had to age to suffer, to become fertile, and that means that life is not the default. It is the aftershock. It comes late, precariously balanced on centuries of chaos and fire. Even on Earth, life may have appeared soon after the planet cooled, but intelligent life, sentient life, only emerged in the last blink of geological time. If the history of Earth were a calendar year, humans appear in the final moments of December 31st. A species that builds computers, questions its own purpose, and dreams of immortality only exists within a hair's breadth of cosmic silence. Yet in that narrow window, we stare into a mystery called the Fermi paradox. Given the age of the universe, the abundance of stars, and the mathematical probability of Earth-like planets, intelligent life should be common, not rare, common. If even a fraction of advanced civilizations develop the ability to explore or communicate across space, the galaxy should be filled with signals, probes, ruins. We should see the fingerprints of intelligence everywhere. But we don't. We hear only silence, we see only emptiness. Why? This question haunts every equation we write. If life is easy, where is everyone? And if life is hard, so hard it has only succeeded here, then what does that make us? An accident, a miracle, or a design? Consider the emergence of technological life, the evolutionary leap from primitive organisms to intelligence capable of altering its environment, manipulating matter, and reflecting on its own mortality is not guaranteed. It requires not just biology, but a strange convergence of memory, imagination, and abstraction. It requires language, symbols, story. It requires not just hands, but the idea of a future. A cataclysm can extinguish it in a moment. A shifting climate, a comet, a gamma, a burst, any of these could erase the human story before it learns to write its second chapter. And yet we remain. The odds are long, but here we are. And we are not just alive, we are reaching. Our telescopes extend sight beyond sight. The James Webb Space Telescope, for example, does not see stars as they are. It sees them as they were, billions of years ago, their light stretched by the expansion of space into the red and infrared. It peers through dust and time, watching galaxies collide, stars being born, the raw mechanics of creation unfolding in slow motion. But with every image it sends, it also sends a question: why does it all seem so structured? The universe is not chaotic, not entirely. Galaxies spin in spirals, filaments of dark matter connect clusters like veins, and even the background radiation of the cosmos, residual heat from the Big Bang, displays patterns too uniform to dismiss. The universe, for all its entropy, began in astonishing order. How? Some propose inflation, a moment of exponential expansion that smoothed out the wrinkles of the early universe. Others suggest a multiverse, where countless bubble universes explode into being, each with its own laws and constants. Ours, by sheer luck, happens to permit life. But others argue that this reasoning is a disguise for deeper discomfort, because the question remains: if the conditions were so specific, why did they occur at all? Why do the constants of nature fall into such a narrow range that if any were slightly different, if the strong nuclear force were weaker, or gravity just a fraction stronger, no stars would form, no atoms would bind, no life would emerge? This is not a small coincidence. It is the kind that suggests something chose the rules. We search for signs of other civilizations, scanning radio frequencies, watching for regular patterns, unnatural emissions, or planetary atmospheres tainted with industrial gases. So far, we've found nothing, not one whisper, not one signal we can decipher, but the absence itself may be a kind of presence. Some scientists now suggest that any sufficiently advanced civilization would not use crude radio. It would encode its messages in quantum states, gravitational waves, or neutrino emissions, mediums we barely understand and cannot yet detect reliably. Or perhaps their communication is not outward, but inward. Silent, hidden in biology, or hidden in code. When we analyze the human genome, we find patterns that repeat, sequences that serve no apparent function, and genes that appear suddenly in evolutionary history with no clear predecessor. There are endogenous retroviruses embedded in our DNA, fragments of ancient viral infections passed down for millions of years. But among these relics lie structures that resemble information, mathematical symmetry, sequences too orderly to be entirely random. Could it be that something encoded a message in the one medium that would endure, not stone, not metal, but life itself? Thought experiments haunt the edges of this question. Imagine an alien civilization 1 billion years older than ours. Not 1,000 years, not 10,000, but 1 billion. If such a species existed, what would they be capable of? They would have mastered energy, matter, perhaps even consciousness. They might not live in bodies, but in networks, simulations, or fields of coherent thought. They would not travel by ship. They would embed themselves in the structure of space-time, manipulate planets as easily as we shape clay. To such a civilization, engineering life would be trivial. They could guide evolution, insert genetic code, sculpt intelligence, seed planets with self-replicating organisms, and observe from a distance as civilizations rise and fall like waves. Perhaps they would never speak directly, perhaps their message is the emergence of the question itself, and this brings us to entropy, the arrow of time. In all systems, disorder increases, heat disperses. Complexity dissolves into noise, but life resists entropy. It builds structure, it maintains order, it breathes heat and gives birth to form. In a universe ruled by decay, life is rebellion. It stands against the tide. It preserves pattern and intelligence. Self-awareness is the highest form of that rebellion. The universe may be dying, but in the heart of that death, something is thinking, wondering, dreaming. That is not trivial. That is not noise. In deep space, we find rogue planets, worlds that do not orbit stars, drifting alone through the black, frozen but intact. We find exoplanets tidally locked, one side in eternal day, the other in endless night. We find water beneath the icy crust of moons, heated not by the sun but by gravitational tension. Life could exist in these places, not as we know it, but life adapted to extremes, life we would not recognize. Perhaps it already exists, or perhaps it waits for something to trigger it. A code, a pulse, a light. All around us, we find signs not of presence, but of absence that is too perfect. Civilizations should leave trash, radiation, echoes. But the skies remain pristine. Is it because no one is there, or because they clean up after themselves, because they are too advanced to be seen by eyes like ours, or because they do not want to be seen? The paradox deepens the closer we look. Technology is accelerating. In just a century, we have moved from fire to fission, from paper to particle accelerators. In another 100 years, we may simulate consciousness, manipulate genomes with precision, even digitize thought. But what if this is not a first ascent, but a second? What if we are reenacting something that has happened before on other worlds in other cycles? What if intelligence always reaches a point where it begins to suspect its own origin? Some cultures speak of gods who came from the sky not in fire, but in memory, who awakened the minds of the first people not with weapons, but with dreams, who taught without speaking and disappeared without leaving bodies. They are remembered not as conquerors, but as architects, engineers of the soul, and if they came once, will they come again, or are we already them? Is the awakening of a species not the discovery of alien life, but the realization that it may be alien itself? That perhaps we are the message, the experiment, the seed. The contradiction grows unbearable. We are nothing, and yet we question everything. We are fragile, and yet we reach for forever. We are temporary, and yet we dream in eternity. What could explain this? What kind of mind would build a being that suffers, loves, ages, weeps, remembers, and hopes, only to vanish into dust, unless the vanishing is not the end? Unless it is part of the return, unless the question itself is the answer, and the silence is a kind of invitation. We are the echo of a question asked long before the earth cooled, not an answer, not a destination. A signal bouncing off the walls of a forgotten cathedral in space. There was no trumpet to announce our arrival, no ceremony to mark the awakening of thought in a primate's skull. There was only stillness, then fire, then memory. We built cities because we were afraid. We built telescopes because we were lonely. We built gods because we could not bear the silence, but the silence was never empty. It was listening, watching, waiting. And now, as we stare back across the abyss speaks not in words, but in the shape of what we have become, the symmetry of our DNA, the recursion of consciousness, the unbearable yearning for something more. These are not human inventions, they are human inheritances, and they were left here, intentionally. We are not the first, we are not the only. We may not even be real in the way we believe. We may be instructions carried forward. Carriers of a pattern, vessels built to become aware. We feel so physical, flesh, bone, breath, but underneath is structure, algorithms, code, a soft machine wrapped in illusion, not because we are fake, but because we are fragile, because the truth would break us. There is a map in our minds, placed there not by gods, not by nature, but by something else. Something ancient, not wise in a human sense. Not cruel, simply beyond. Something that does not think in language or gesture, but in gravity, geometry, rhythm. It speaks in the folding of protein, in the way a neuron fires when it sees a mother's face, in the taste of metal on the tongue when we dream too deep, and what it says again and again is, remember, but we do not remember, we suspect, we ache, we build myths and think them imagination, not realizing they are recovery. They are scars, and still we search the stars. We launch golden records into the dark, filled with music and mathematics and human laughter as if the dark would care. But maybe it does. Maybe the dark remembers what we forgot. Maybe the void we fear is not our enemy but our origin. Maybe the cold between galaxies is not a prison but a womb, and we are only just beginning to wake. We thought alien meant distant, tentacled, foreign, but the alien may already live inside us, in the code of our being, in the recursive hunger to understand. No other species on Earth writes symphonies about death. No other species stares at its own reflection and weeps. That is not adaptation, that is not survival, that is invocation. We are trying to summon something back. We are trying to summon ourselves. What if the engineers are not gone? What if they became us? What if we are the memory of their failure, or worse? What if we are the continuation of their design, not free, not chosen, just next? Imagine a species so old, so vast, that it ran out of questions. A species that mapped the whole sky, dissected every particle, watched every star collapse, and in the end it faced the one thing it could not escape, meaninglessness, so it made us, not to worship it, not to serve it, but to begin again, to ask the questions it could no longer ask, to feel wonder it could no longer feel, to hurt, to love, to forget. We are the dream of a tired God, and we are dreaming ourselves into something new. But dreams end, and time is not our ally. Entropy will unmake us, the stars will die, the galaxies will drift into isolation, black holes will evaporate, even memory will collapse into nothing, and we will be gone. And not just humans, not just Earth, all of it, everything, the simulation, the theater, the code, the curtain will fall and there will be only silence again. So why begin? Why create a universe only to let it die? Unless death is the message, unless impermanence is the only thing real. Maybe the engineers understood that eternity is a lie, that perfection is stasis, that to feel you must risk loss, that to live you must die. And so they made a world of time, a world that erodes, a world where beauty fades and love ends, and every hello carries goodbye inside it. A world where nothing lasts, except the ache to make something that does. We are not here to survive, we are here to break, to reach, to fail, to try again, to be seen, to vanish. That is the gift, that is the curse, that is the point. We thought we were looking for aliens. But maybe we were looking for a mirror, and in that mirror we saw a child staring into the dark, asking softly, "Are you still there?" And maybe across the void something answered, not in light, not in sound, but in the way our hands tremble when we touch another soul, in the way we build machines that dream, in the way we whisper stories to the sky, knowing no one may ever hear. We are not the center, we are not the beginning. We are a continuation, we are the question, and the question is all we have. Everything else will end, but the asking goes on. The earth is so small, floating in the darkness like a blue breath held too long. From space, there are no borders, no names, just swirling clouds, cracked deserts, green veins of life curling over a trembling crust, and beneath it all, 8 billion minds wrapped in soft skin, walking on a miracle we do not understand. We are children playing beneath a dying sky, and the sky is older than our dreams, older than our stories, older than the gods we built to explain our loneliness. Now we know, or at least we suspect, that we are not alone, not in the way we once thought, but because something came before us and left its fingerprints inside our cells. That realization does not make us gods, it makes us heirs, not chosen. Just present, the last flame carried in a shaking hand through a universe made of night, and what we do with that flame will decide if the silence returns, or if the fire spreads. So what now? What does it mean to be human in a world that may be a message? To live on a planet that is both seed and whisper, it means nothing. It means everything. It means that every heartbeat is not just biology, it is history echoing forward. It means that the child reaching for their parent's hand under a morning sun is part of something older than the stars. It means the tears we shed when we lose someone are not weakness, but remembrance. We remember what the void forgot, the feeling of being close, the warmth of another soul, the miracle of meaning, however brief. We were never meant to last. Nothing is. The stars will die, the galaxies will fade, even time will stretch until it breaks. But while we are here, we can choose. We can choose to protect, to create. To understand, to love, not because it will last, but because it is beautiful, because beauty, even if forgotten, is real when it's felt. Look at a single tree. Its roots dig into the soil where bones once lay. Its leaves drink light that crossed millions of miles. Its seed waited in silence, unsure if the rains would ever come. That tree does not know what it is, but it grows anyway, just as we must, just as we can. Because to live in awareness is to carry two truths, that everything ends and that while it lasts, it matters. A mother holding her newborn does not care that the stars will die. She sees the universe in soft skin and closed eyes. She hears the future in a single breath. That is how we begin again, not with machines, not with power, with care, with courage, with a choice to be kind even when the dark is watching, especially then. This planet so fragile, so furious is not just our home. It is our test. It burns, it floods, it shudders beneath our feet. It challenges us to be better than we were, not because it owes us anything, but because we owe it everything. We were shaped by this place. Its storms gave us fear, its sunsets gave us awe, its gravity taught us how to fall, and now we are old enough to decide what we become. Will we consume until there is nothing left? Will we reach for stars while our oceans choke? Or will we remember that our ancestors, whoever they were, built us not to destroy, but to endure? Endurance is not survival. It is responsibility. It is seeing the child and choosing to teach them the truth. That they are the next carrier of the question, that the fire lives in them now. Do not mistake size for insignificance. The atom is small, the seed is small, the human hand is small, but it can plant. It can build, it can lift. The universe does not measure greatness in scale, it measures it in meaning, and we are meaning makers, not by nature, but by choice. That is our power, that is our curse, that is our light. We can look at a dying star and weep. We can hold a grain of sand and see an entire world. We can imagine, and imagination is the root of every resurrection, even if we are engineered, even if we are the continuation of something ancient and alien and cold. We are not bound by their reasons. We are free in a way they may have forgotten. We can change course. We can break the pattern. We can become more than our origin. We can be the first of something new. Something compassionate, something awake. That is what hope means now, not denial, not ignorance, but action in the face of entropy, creation in the face of collapse. Hope is not the belief that we will win. It is the belief that trying is sacred, that trying is the point, and if we carry that forward, if we raise our children not to conquer, but to connect, then maybe the next civilization won't need to ask if it was made by gods. It will know it was made by those who chose to love in spite of the dark. So plant the seed, tell the story, build the bridge, and when the stars begin to fade, let us be the ones who lit the fire again. There is a sound the earth makes when no one is listening. It is not the wind or the sea or the thunder beneath the crust. It is older, quieter, a hum that never stops, the low vibration of time folding inward, the signature of a world still turning in the dark. If you could hold your breath long enough, if you could still every thought and silence every fear, you might feel it, like a thread, invisible and trembling, stretching from your chest to the edge of everything. That is the whisper. It is not loud, but it never leaves. It weaves through atoms, oceans, bones. It hums through the spaces between stars, through galaxies collapsing into silence, through the thoughts we never speak aloud. And maybe it is not a whisper at all. Maybe it is a question, one never asked, but always waiting. Why this? Why here? Why now? Not just life, but memory. Not just flesh, but dream. A question coded in DNA, etched into the spiral of galaxies, folded into the curvature of time. A question that exists only because we exist to feel its weight, and we carry it every day without knowing. When we build, when we break, when we reach, when we mourn, it moves with us, through us, waiting for the moment we are still enough to hear. The stars have seen more than we will ever understand. They have watched empires of hydrogen burn themselves into nothing. They have watched planets live and die in the silence between breaths. They have seen what comes before consciousness and what remains after it fades. If the stars could speak, they might not give answers. They might only tell stories. Long, slow stories without beginnings, without endings. Just patterns that rise and fall, like tides pulled by forgotten moons. They might tell of minds like ours, once bold, once beautiful, now buried beneath layers of light, or of travelers who tried to cross the void and were swallowed by the hunger between stars, or of creators who became prisoners of their own design. They might speak of civilizations that never asked and so never learned, and they might speak of us, a brief flicker, trembling against the cold, reaching with hands too small to hold the sky, but we reached anyway. And in that reaching, something sacred unfolded, not triumph, not dominion, but awareness, the knowledge that we are not gods and never were, the knowledge that we are fragile, finite, fallible, and that this is what makes us real. The universe does not demand perfection, it does not demand power, it only demands presence, to be here, to see, to feel, to carry the weight of not knowing and still move forward. That is enough, that is everything. Because in the end, the cosmos is not made of answers. It is made of questions that bloom in the silence, of mysteries that deepen the more we love them, of truths so vast they can only be held with the heart. We were never meant to solve the universe. We were meant to witness it, to marvel, to reflect, to mirror the infinite within the finite, briefly, imperfectly, beautifully, and maybe that is the reason we were made. Not to mind the stars or conquer time, but to listen, to feel, to remember, to let the silence speak, to become the echo that endures when the voice is gone. So listen now, not with ears, with everything. Listen and you will hear it, the whisper beneath the world. It has always been there, waiting.